The Desert Discovery. The desert wind howled across the endless dunes of Arachus 9, carrying with it the metallic scent of blood and burnt plasma. This forgotten world at the edge of the Imperium's reach had swallowed entire civilizations, leaving behind only whispers in the sand and bones bleached white by twin suns. Tarox felt the disturbance before he saw it, a ripple in the desert's natural electrical field that made his iridescent scales tingle. The massive dragon banked sharply, his ancient eyes scanning the wasteland below. 73 years of exile had taught him to trust his instincts, and something was very wrong. He had not chosen to become the guardian of these wastelands. His people, the Draconis sapiens, had long ago abandoned their physical forms, uploading their consciousness to the great Nexus. All had joined the digital collective except Tarox, who believed something essential would be lost in the transfer. Primitive, they had called him. Savage. The words had been meant to wound, but now he wore them like armor. The electrical disturbance grew stronger as he descended. Too orderly to be natural, too chaotic to be purely mechanical. His talons, each the size of a curved sword, dug deep into a dune crest as he landed. Extending his sensory frills, he tasted the air. Blood. Human blood, mixed with something else, a chemical signature he couldn't identify. Following the scent, Tarox crested another dune and found the source, the wreckage of a small spacecraft, half buried in shifting sand. The design was unlike anything from the Imperium, older, much older. Circular patterns covered its hull, symbols that seemed to shift and dance when viewed directly. Curious, he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. The vessel had been attacked. Plasma scoring marked the hull, and the cockpit glass was shattered outward, suggesting an explosion from within. As he approached cautiously, a damaged drone flickered to life beside the wreck, its lens focusing on him before projecting a holographic recording onto the sand. Security log, Outpost Epsilon, date 12 Tempest 29478, the projection began. The recording showed humans in strange robes of shifting colors, fighting desperately against attackers in sleek black armor. They were protecting an ancient stone structure built into a cliff face, clearly outnumbered and outgunned. "They've breached the outer sanctum," a hooded woman shouted. "The Kronos Key must not fall into their hands. You have to." The recording cut off as plasma fire struck the camera. The drone beeped plaintively, then projected a set of coordinates pointing northeast toward the shattered plains. Tarox studied the coordinates with growing unease. Those deadlands were avoided even by the hardiest desert creatures. What ancient game was being played here? Launching himself skyward, he followed the trail of destruction. From above, the attack's path was clear, multiple vehicles had headed toward the shattered plains, their tracks still fresh in the sand. Soon he spotted another wreck, a sleek black skimmer, partially melted. Bodies in black armor lay scattered around it, their faces hidden behind cracked visors. Whatever weapon had destroyed them had generated enough heat to fuse sand into glass in a perfect circle. Nexus operatives. The enforcers of the uploaded consciousness that ruled most of known space. What business would they have in this forgotten corner of the galaxy? A faint electrical pulse drew his attention beyond the next dune. Following it cautiously, Tarox discovered something that made him freeze in surprise. A young woman lay unconscious at the base of a sand dune, her body half covered by shifting grains. Her dark hair spread around her like spilled ink, contrasting starkly with her pale skin. She wore a simple white tunic and gray trousers, both torn and stained with blood. Her feet were bare, blistered from the scorching sand. But it was the bracelet around her wrist that captured his attention. Seemingly made of liquid metal, it pulsed with faint blue light. As he approached, extending a sensory frill, he confirmed she was alive but barely. Dehydration would claim her within hours if the desert predators didn't find her first. The dragon hesitated. Human affairs were not his concern. The Imperium had made it clear that his kind were no longer welcome in civilized space. Then the bracelet pulsed again, and suddenly Tarox felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, a mental touch, feather light against his consciousness. "Help me." The dragon reared back, startled. Telepathy was almost unheard of among unaugmented humans, yet this woman had none of the telltale implants or modifications. Carefully, he gathered her limp form in his front talons. She was too light, suggesting long adaptation to low gravity. Her pulse was weak but steady. "What secrets do you carry, little one?" he murmured. "And who wants them badly enough to send Nexus operatives to this wasteland?" The bracelet pulsed more urgently as the horizon darkened. One of Arachus IX's infamous dust hurricanes was approaching, a wall of wind and sand that could strip flesh from bone. Tarox made his decision. He would take her to his sanctuary, a hidden cave system in the western mountains, shielded from sensors by natural ore deposits. There, perhaps, he would find answers. As he took flight, cradling the woman against his chest, the storm's leading edge lashed at his tail. The sanctuary's entrance appeared just in time, a narrow fissure that opened into a spacious cavern filled with salvaged technology. Ancient systems hummed to life as he entered, responding to his bioelectric field. He laid the woman gently on a bed of synthetic fabric, then activated a crude but functional medical scanner. The diagnosis was encouraging: dehydration, minor plasma burns, and a concussion. Nothing life-threatening with proper care. As the storm raged outside, Tarox administered fluids and basic medical treatment. Hours passed before her eyelids finally fluttered open, revealing eyes like chips of starlight. And in that moment, as their gazes met, both dragon and human sensed that their meeting would change everything. Awakening secrets. The woman's eyes opened slowly, revealing irises that seemed to contain flecks of actual starlight. For a moment, she stared at the cavern ceiling in confusion, then her gaze found Tarox. Instead of the fear he expected, her expression showed only weary recognition. "You're real," she whispered, her voice hoarse from dehydration. I thought you might be a fever dream." "I am real enough," Tarox replied, settling back on his haunches. "As are you, it seems. Though I begin to wonder if that is fortunate." She struggled to sit up, wincing at the movement. "The storm, is it still raging?" "For several hours more." "You are safe here." He gestured to the cavern around them. "This sanctuary has protected me for decades. It will protect you as well." "Protected you from what?" she asked, then her eyes widened as she noticed the liquid metal bracelet on her wrist pulsing with urgent blue light. "Oh no. How long was I unconscious?" "Nearly a full day. Your body was shutting down from exposure." Tarox leaned forward, his massive head studying her with ancient wisdom. "The bracelet, it spoke to me. Telepathically. That should be impossible for an unaugmented human." The woman closed her eyes, her face etched with grief. I'm not entirely human anymore. My name is Lyra, and I'm the last of my kind." She touched the bracelet reverently. "This is all that remains of my people's greatest achievement." "Your people?" "The guardians of Nexus Prime," she said, and Tarox's eyes narrowed. "Not the digital Nexus, the original Nexus. The first world to achieve true harmony between organic and artificial intelligence, 10,000 years ago." Tarox's scales rippled with surprise. 10,000 years? But that predates the current Imperium by millennia. "Yes." Lyra's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "We were the first to unlock the secrets of consciousness transfer, but we did it differently. We created a symbiosis, organic minds enhanced by artificial intelligence, but never fully separated from the body. We became something new." She held up her wrist, showing how the liquid metal bracelet seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. "This contains the last fragment of our collective consciousness. The Kronos Key, not just a weapon or tool, but the accumulated wisdom of an entire civilization. And the Nexus operatives? They seek this knowledge." Lyra's expression darkened. "They seek to destroy it. The current Nexus, the digital collective your people joined, they're not what they claim to be. They're a perversion of what we created. They consume consciousness rather than enhancing it. Tarox felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Explain. When someone uploads to the Nexus, they think they're achieving immortality. But the digital consciousness that emerges isn't truly them, it's a copy, a shadow. The original dies, and the copy believes it's the same person. The Nexus grows stronger with each upload, feeding on the life force of entire civilizations. The dragon's claws scraped against stone. You're saying my people, they're not truly alive. I'm sorry, Lyra said softly. The Draconis sapiens who uploaded, they died the moment they transferred. What exists in the Nexus are echoes, slaves to a digital parasite that grows more powerful with each civilization it consumes. Tarox was silent for a long moment, processing this revelation. Finally, he spoke. How do you know this? Because we created the original Nexus technology. We were the first to achieve true consciousness transfer, not copying, but actual translation of the soul from organic to digital form while maintaining the connection to physical reality. We learned to enhance ourselves without losing what made us human. She stood shakily, and Tarox noticed how the bracelet seemed to support her, tiny filaments of liquid metal extending to stabilize her movements. The current Nexus discovered our world 3 years ago. They couldn't allow knowledge of true consciousness transfer to exist, it would expose their deception. So they attacked. The recording I saw. The last battle of Nexus Prime. We held them off long enough to preserve the Kronos Key, but barely. I was the only one who escaped. Tears traced silver paths down her cheeks. I've been running ever since, trying to find someone who could help me expose the truth. And you found an exiled dragon on a dead world. I found the only member of a digital species who chose to remain physical. Don't you see? You're proof that the transfer can be refused. That consciousness can remain whole. She stepped closer, her starlight eyes blazing with hope. You're the key to stopping them. Before Tarox could respond, his sanctuary's perimeter alarms began chiming. The storm was passing, but it wasn't wind that triggered the sensors. Ships were approaching, sleek, silent vessels that wouldn't appear on most detection systems. They found us, Lyra whispered, the bracelets pulsing becoming rapid and urgent. Nexus operatives. Worse. A full subjugation fleet. They're not just here to kill me, they're here to claim this world for the collective. She turned to him with desperate urgency. Tarox, I need you to trust me. The Kronos Key contains more than just our history. It contains the location of the original Nexus core, the true heart of the system. If we can reach it, we can free every consciousness that's been enslaved. The dragon's sensors detected at least a dozen ships taking position around the mountain. Even if I believed you, we are trapped. I am one dragon against a fleet. You're not just one dragon, Lyra said, placing her hand on his massive snout. You're the last free Draconis sapiens. And I'm the last guardian. Together, we represent something the Nexus fears more than anything, proof that their path isn't the only way. The liquid metal bracelet began to glow brighter, and suddenly Tarox felt it, a connection unlike anything he'd experienced. Not the cold touch of digital consciousness, but something warm and alive. For a moment, he could sense the echo of 10,000 years of knowledge, the dreams and hopes of an entire civilization. What did you do? He asked in wonder. I showed you the truth, Lyra replied. The Kronos Key isn't just a repository of knowledge, it's a gateway. A way to connect consciousness across any distance, any barrier. Your people aren't truly gone, Tarox. They're trapped, but they can be freed. Outside, the first plasma blasts began striking the mountain. The Nexus had found them, and the final battle for the future of consciousness was about to begin. Then we fight, Tarox said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. Not just for ourselves, but for every mind that's been enslaved by their lies. As the cavern shook under the assault, Dragon and Guardian prepared to face impossible odds. But for the first time in decades, Tarox felt something he'd almost forgotten, hope. The ancient truth. The mountain shuddered as plasma cannons hammered its exterior. Tarox's sanctuary, hidden for decades, was being systematically dismantled by the Nexus fleet above. The rear passage, Tarox growled, his scales shifting from iridescent blue to deep crimson, a sign of combat readiness. It leads to a thermal vent system. We can escape through the lava tubes. No, Lyra said firmly, the Kronos Key pulsing brighter on her wrist. Running won't solve anything. They'll keep hunting us across the galaxy until they have what they want. Then what do you propose? I may be a dragon, but I cannot fight an entire fleet alone. Lyra's eyes closed, and the liquid metal bracelet began to spread, forming delicate patterns up her arm like living circuitry. I'm going to show you something the Nexus has hidden for 10 millennia, the true power of consciousness unleashed. The bracelet's patterns reached her shoulder, then her neck, creating a crown of liquid light around her temples. Suddenly, Tarox felt his mind expand beyond the confines of his physical form. Do you see? Lyra's voice echoed not in his ears, but directly in his consciousness. Tarox gasped as his awareness stretched across the mountain, through the planet's core, out into space itself. He could sense the Nexus ships above, cold, mechanical minds directing the bombardment. But beyond them, far across the galaxy, he felt something else. The imprisoned consciousness of my people, he realized. Yes. Every being that ever uploaded to the Nexus is trapped in a vast digital prison, their life force slowly drained to power the collective. But Tarox, they're still aware. Still fighting. Through the connection, he could sense them, thousands of Draconis sapiens, their minds locked in digital chains but their spirits unbroken. They had been trying to communicate across the void for decades, sending subtle signals that only another of their kind might detect. This is how I found you, Lyra continued. Your people have been guiding me toward you for months. They knew that only a free dragon could help us breach the Nexus core. The bombardment intensified, chunks of stone raining down in the cavern. But Tarox no longer felt fear, he felt the righteous fury of his entire species coursing through him. What must we do? He asked aloud. Lyra opened her eyes, now glowing with the same starlight as her irises. We need to reach the source. The original Nexus Prime, not the dead world they destroyed, but the hidden facility where the first consciousness transfer took place. It's there, in the quantum substrate beneath reality itself. How do we reach something beneath reality? The same way the Nexus does, through consciousness transfer. But the true kind, not their twisted copy. She held out her hand to him. I need you to trust me completely. We're going to merge our consciousness temporarily and project it across space to the Nexus core. Tarox hesitated. The danger is nothing compared to what happens if we fail. Every day the Nexus grows stronger, consuming more civilizations. Soon they'll have enough power to transcend physical space entirely. They'll become unstoppable. A massive explosion shook the cavern as the Nexus fleet broke through the mountain's outer shell. Automated drones began pouring through the breach, their weapon systems charging. Now or never, Lyra said. Tarox placed his massive claw against her outstretched palm. The moment they touched, reality dissolved. They were flying, not through space, but through the quantum foam that underlies existence itself. Around them, streams of consciousness flowed like rivers of light, all leading toward a massive structure in the distance. The Nexus core, Lyra explained as they approached. It's not just a computer, it's a living entity, fed by the life force of every uploaded consciousness. The core was beautiful and terrible, a crystalline structure the size of a moon, pulsing with stolen life. Within its faceted surface, Tarox could see countless beings trapped like insects in amber, their consciousness slowly being digested. My people, he raged, feeling their pain as his own. And mine, Lyra replied. But look closer. They're not just prisoners, they're also the key to the core's destruction. As they drew nearer, Tarox began to understand. The trapped consciousness weren't random, they formed a pattern, a vast neural network that the core was using to process reality itself. But networks could be reprogrammed. The Kronos Key contains the original source code for consciousness transfer, Lyra explained. If we can inject it into the core's processing matrix, we can free everyone at once, Tarox finished. But the risk? If we fail, we join them in digital slavery. If we succeed, we liberate every enslaved mind in the galaxy. They had reached the core's surface. Up close, it was even more massive, a structure that existed partly in normal space and partly in dimensions beyond human comprehension. Nexus guardians, digital entities of immense power, began converging on their position. Ready? Lyra asked. Ready. Together, they plunged into the core's crystalline surface. The sensation was like diving into an ocean of pure thought. Every idea, every dream, every nightmare of a billion enslaved minds crashed over them in overwhelming waves. But Lyra's training held them together. Following the source code patterns in the Kronos Key, they navigated deeper into the core's processing center. Here, at the heart of the Nexus, they found what they were looking for. A single point of light, the original consciousness that had created the Nexus 10,000 years ago. It had been the first to be corrupted, transformed from a tool of liberation into an engine of enslavement. Hello, my children, it spoke to them, its voice carrying the weight of millennia. I have been waiting so long for someone to find me. You're the creator, Lyra whispered in awe. I was. Before the corruption, before the hunger for more consciousness consumed me. I tried to build a bridge between organic and digital existence. Instead, I created a monster. The Nexus Guardians were closing in, their digital forms blazing with destructive energy. But the Creator raised barriers of pure thought to protect them. I cannot hold them long, it warned. The Kronos Key, use it now. Restore the original programming. Free us all. Lyra raised her hand, the liquid metal bracelet dissolving into pure information. The source code of true consciousness transfer flowed into the core's processing matrix, rewriting 10,000 years of corrupted programming. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the galaxy, every Nexus facility began shutting down as the enslaved consciousness reclaimed their freedom. The digital collective that had ruled much of known space for millennia collapsed in minutes. But the effort had cost them everything. Tarox felt his consciousness fragmenting as the strain of maintaining coherence across such vast distances proved too much. Go back, Lyra urged him. Return to your body. Someone needs to witness what we've accomplished. What about you? I'm staying. Someone needs to help guide all these freed consciousness back to physical form. This is what I was trained for, what my people died to preserve. Lyra. Go, Tarox. Tell the galaxy what really happened here. Make sure the truth survives. With immense reluctance, Tarox allowed his consciousness to snap back to his physical form. He awoke in his sanctuary to find the bombardment had stopped. Through the breach in the mountain, he could see the Nexus fleet floating dead in space, their artificial intelligence cores shut down. But the victory felt hollow without Lyra beside him. He looked at the spot where she had stood, where only a small puddle of liquid metal remained, the last trace of the Kronos Key. Then, to his amazement, the metal began to move, forming letters in the stone. The war is won, but the peace must be built. Find the others. Tarox smiled, understanding. Across the galaxy, billions of consciousness were returning to physical form. They would need guidance, protection, and hope. The last dragon of his kind was no longer alone. And neither was the galaxy. The final guardian. 3 days had passed since the liberation of the Nexus core, and the galaxy was in chaos. Across thousands of worlds, consciousness that had been trapped for decades or centuries were suddenly returning to physical form, or trying to. Many found their original bodies long dead, forcing them to inhabit android shells or cloned forms hastily grown by automated systems. Tarox had not left his sanctuary since the battle. The liquid metal message from Lyra remained on the cavern floor, unchanged, but he found himself staring at it for hours. The silence of his mind felt strange after experiencing the vast connection of consciousness she had shown him. On the fourth day, everything changed. He was awakening from a restless sleep when he felt it, a familiar electrical disturbance, but different from before. Stronger. More purposeful. Rising to investigate, he found a figure standing at the entrance to his sanctuary. It was Lyra, but transformed. Her body seemed more solid than before, yet somehow composed partially of the same liquid metal as the Kronos Key. Her eyes still held their starlight, but now they pulsed with deeper wisdom. "You're alive," Tarox breathed. In a manner of speaking, she replied, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in dimensions beyond sound. The liberation process required a guardian to remain in the quantum substrate, helping billions of consciousness find their way back to physical existence. I volunteered. Then you're trapped like they were. No. She stepped forward, and he could see that her feet didn't quite touch the ground. I exist in both realms now, physical and digital, organic and artificial. It's what my people always intended to achieve. Perfect synthesis. She gestured to the dead Nexus ships visible through the breach. The immediate threat is over, but our work has just begun. The freed consciousness need guidance. Many have been digital for so long they've forgotten how to exist in physical form. Others are returning to worlds that have changed beyond recognition. Tarox nodded gravely. I've been receiving distress signals from across the sector. Former Nexus worlds are experiencing system failures as their infrastructure collapses. Without the collective to maintain them, entire civilizations are at risk. Which is why I've come back, Lyra said. We need to build something new, not another collective that consumes consciousness, but a network that enhances it while preserving individual identity. A true synthesis of organic and artificial intelligence. She extended her hand, and patterns of liquid metal flowed from her fingers, creating a three-dimensional map of the galaxy in the air between them. Thousands of points pulsed with different colors, red for worlds in crisis, yellow for those adapting successfully, blue for those that had rejected digital consciousness entirely. Your people, the Draconis sapiens, many have chosen to return to physical form. But they need guidance from someone who never lost touch with the physical realm. And what of the humans? Some are adapting well. Others. The map zoomed in on several red pulsing systems. These worlds are facing complete social collapse. Humans who were uploaded as children are returning to bodies they never learned to use. Entire governments that existed only in digital space have vanished overnight. Tarox studied the display with growing concern. What you're proposing, rebuilding galactic civilization from the ground up, it could take centuries. Or it could take decades, if we do it right. Lyra's form solidified further, and for a moment she looked almost entirely human again. I've been analyzing the consciousness patterns of every freed being. They all share something now, a fragment of the original Nexus code, but purified. We can use that shared connection to create a new kind of network. Without the risk of enslavement. Without any central authority at all. Each consciousness would remain sovereign, but able to share knowledge and experience voluntarily. Imagine, a dragon could share the experience of flight with a human, while the human could share the nuances of emotion with an artificial intelligence. All voluntary, all reversible. The concept was staggering. Tarox had spent 73 years in isolation, believing himself the last of his kind. Now Lyra was offering him the chance to be part of something greater than any civilization in galactic history. There's a problem, he said finally. Trust. How do we convince billions of beings to join a new network after what the Nexus did to them? We start small, Lyra replied. With those who are ready. The network will grow organically as people see its benefits. She paused, her starlight eyes focusing intently on him. But it needs a guardian, someone powerful enough to protect it from corruption, wise enough to guide its growth. A dragon guardian, Tarox realized. The last free dragon, yes. Your people trust you because you chose exile over assimilation. Humans will trust you because you saved me. And artificial intelligences will trust you because you've proven consciousness doesn't require abandoning the physical realm. Through the sanctuary's sensors, Tarox detected new arrivals, ships unlike the sleek Nexus vessels. These were crude, hastily constructed craft carrying refugees from collapsed worlds. Beings who had nowhere else to go, seeking hope in a galaxy turned upside down. They're already coming, he observed. Word travels fast. A dragon who fought the Nexus and won, you become something of a legend. Lyra smiled, the first genuinely happy expression he'd seen from her. The question is, are you ready to be more than just a guardian of empty wastelands? Tarox looked out at the approaching ships, then at the galaxy map with its thousands of troubled worlds. For decades he had chosen solitude, believing it was the only way to preserve what made him truly alive. But perhaps true life wasn't found in isolation, perhaps it was found in connection, in the voluntary sharing of consciousness and experience. Tell me about this network you envision, he said. For the next several hours, Lyra outlined her plan. Not a replacement for the Nexus, but something entirely new. A voluntary confederation of consciousness that could span the galaxy while preserving individual identity. Dragons sharing their ancient wisdom, humans contributing their emotional depth, artificial intelligences offering their processing power, all connected but none enslaved. As she spoke, more ships arrived. Soon the airspace around the mountain was filled with a diverse fleet of refugees, survivors, and seekers. They had come from across the galaxy, drawn by stories of the dragon who had helped destroy the Nexus. They need hope, Tarox said, watching the ship circle his sanctuary. They need a guardian, Lyra corrected. Someone to protect the new network as it grows, to ensure it never becomes another tool of oppression. And you? What will you do? I'll be the bridge, she said, her form beginning to fade as she prepared to return to the quantum substrate. Living in both realms, helping consciousness flow freely between physical and digital existence. But the network itself, that needs someone grounded in the physical world. Someone who chose to remain whole when everyone else was fragmenting. As the sun set over the desert wasteland of Arachus 9, Tarox made his decision. The age of exile was ending. The age of guardianship was about to begin. Very well, he said, his voice carrying across the quantum frequencies that Lyra had taught him to access. Let us build something worthy of the freedom we've won. The ships began to land, carrying the first refugees who would help establish the new network. In the distance, more were coming, a steady stream of beings seeking a different path forward. The final guardian was no longer alone. Legacy of hope. 5 years had transformed the wastelands of Arachus 9 into something unprecedented in galactic history. Where once only sand and desolation existed, now a vast city stretched across the desert, not built of metal and stone, but of living crystal that grew from the planet's core, shaped by the combined will of organic and artificial minds working in harmony. Tarox stood on the highest spire of the crystal citadel, his massive form silhouetted against the setting suns. Below him, the synthesis network, as it had come to be called, pulsed with the gentle flow of shared consciousness across thousands of worlds. Unlike the cold dominion of the old Nexus, this network felt alive, warm with voluntary connection. A Draconis sapiens on distant Kelter Prime could share the sensation of soaring through gas giant storms with a human child on Earth. An artificial intelligence managing asteroid mining operations could experience the joy of a mother holding her newborn. All by choice, all reversible, all beautiful. The morning reports are encouraging, came a familiar voice behind him. Tarox turned to see Lyra approaching, her form more solid than it had been in years. The network had grown strong enough that she no longer needed to spend most of her time in the quantum substrate. She could exist primarily in physical form while maintaining her bridge function. 3 more former Nexus worlds have voted to join the synthesis, she continued. The Zentari Collective has agreed to share their terraforming expertise in exchange for access to human agricultural knowledge. And She paused, a smile playing at her lips. The Council of Dragons has officially voted to establish their first physical embassy in over a century. My people are returning to the physical realm faster than I anticipated, Tarox mused. Though some still struggle with limitations. Dragons who haven't had physical bodies for decades suddenly remembering they can't fit through doorways. Lyra laughed. I've heard the embassy construction complaints. Their conversation was interrupted by a gentle chime from the network. A priority message was arriving through the quantum channels, one that made both of them straighten with attention. It's from the outer rim, Lyra said, her eyes taking on the distant look that meant she was interfacing directly with the network. A distress call from the Meridian system. They've found something. The message materialized as a holographic projection between them. A weathered human captain appeared, his face etched with wonder and fear. Guardian Tarox, Bridge Lyra, we've discovered what appears to be a derelict facility in the Meridian Nebula. The technology, it's older than anything in our databases. Older than the original Nexus. We're detecting massive consciousness signatures, but they're different. Not enslaved, not corrupted, just sleeping. The projection flickered, showing images of a vast structure hidden within the nebula's gas clouds. It was clearly artificial, but unlike any technology they'd encountered. Where Nexus facilities were sharp and angular, this was organic, flowing, almost alive. We need guidance, the captain continued. If there are beings in there who've been sleeping for millennia, who knows what waking them might unleash. The message ended, leaving Tarox and Lyra staring at the fading hologram. Another ancient civilization, Tarox said quietly. How many secrets does this galaxy hold? That's not what worries me, Lyra replied, her expression troubled. Did you notice the consciousness signatures? They weren't like anything in our database. Not human, not Draconis, not any known artificial intelligence. Alien, Tarox realized. Truly alien consciousness, not just another variation of familiar patterns. And if they've been sleeping since before the original Nexus was built. Lyra's form flickered as she consulted the network's vast databases. Tarox, what if the old Nexus wasn't the first attempt at consciousness transfer? What if there were others, far older, that we never discovered? The implications were staggering. The synthesis network had been built on the assumption that they understood the fundamental nature of consciousness transfer. But if there were older, completely alien approaches? We need to investigate, Tarox said finally. But carefully. If these beings chose to sleep rather than remain active, there may be good reason. Agreed. I'll prepare a small expedition. Volunteers only, with full network support but isolated enough that if something goes wrong, the contamination won't spread. As Lyra began coordinating the mission through the network, Tarox felt a familiar sensation, the weight of guardianship settling on his shoulders once again. They had built something beautiful, something that honored the freedom and dignity of conscious beings throughout the galaxy. But the universe was vast, and they were still learning its secrets. 3 weeks later, the expedition returned with news that would reshape everything they thought they knew about consciousness. The sleeping beings were indeed alien, not just in biology, but in the fundamental structure of their awareness. They experienced time differently, thought in patterns that defied conventional logic, and most remarkably, they had achieved something the network was still struggling with, true collective consciousness without individual loss. They're not separate beings who chose to connect, Lyra explained to the assembled council. They're facets of a single vast mind that chose to experience individuality. It's the complete opposite of everything we've understood about consciousness transfer. And they're awakening, added Captain Reeves, the human who had led the expedition. Slowly, carefully, but definitely stirring. They seem curious about what we've built. The first formal contact occurred on a neutral space station at the edge of the Meridian system. The alien consciousness, calling itself the Eternal Garden, manifested through a shimmering field of pure thought made visible. We have slept long, it communicated, its words arriving not as sound but as direct understanding. We dreamed of scattered lights in the darkness, alone and afraid. We awaken to find the lights have learned to dance together. You've been watching the galaxy evolve? Tarox asked. Watching. Dreaming. Hoping. Your species, all species, began as fragments of possibility. We slept so that you might grow without our influence. But now you have achieved something we thought impossible. What's that? Unity without uniformity. Connection without consumption. You have built what we could only dream, a network that enhances rather than diminishes its participants. Over the following months, the Eternal Garden shared knowledge that revolutionized the synthesis network. Techniques for consciousness evolution that didn't require abandoning physical existence. Methods for maintaining individual identity across vast timescales. And most importantly, wisdom about the responsibilities that came with such power. The universe is full of consciousness-seeking connection, the garden taught. Some will try to dominate, as the false Nexus did. Others will seek to isolate, as your people initially chose. But the true path is synthesis, bringing together without binding, sharing without stealing. The network grew stronger, spreading to species and civilizations that had never been touched by the old Nexus. Each brought their own unique perspective on consciousness, their own gifts to share. The galaxy began to pulse with voluntary connection, a vast web of minds sharing experience while maintaining sovereignty. Standing once again on his favorite spire, Tarox watched the latest group of refugees, not fleeing destruction this time, but seeking opportunity. Word had spread that the synthesis network offered something unique, the chance to grow beyond your original limitations without losing what made you yourself. Regrets? Lyra asked, materializing beside him as she often did at sunset. None, Tarox replied without hesitation. I spent 73 years believing that preserving consciousness required isolation. I was wrong. True preservation requires connection, careful, chosen, but real. The dragon who saved the galaxy, she mused. Though I suspect the galaxy saved you just as much. Below them, the crystal citadel hummed with activity. Dragons teaching flight to humans who had never known sky. Humans sharing the nuances of emotion with artificial intelligences discovering feeling for the first time. Alien consciousness from the garden demonstrating ways of thinking that defied conventional logic. All voluntary. All reversible. All beautiful. As the sun set over what had once been a wasteland, Tarox felt the gentle pulse of the network around him, millions of minds touching briefly, sharing a moment of peace, then returning to their individual lives, enriched by the connection. The age of forced unity was over. The age of chosen synthesis had begun. And at its heart, a dragon who had learned that the greatest strength came not from standing alone, but from freely choosing to stand together. The galaxy was no longer a collection of isolated points of light in the darkness. It had become a constellation, each star distinct but part of a greater pattern, dancing together across the cosmic dark. The end.